Welcome to the Code with Jason meetup. I'm here with my new friend Shalini. Welcome, Shalini.
Hi, thank you so much.
And welcome, dear viewer. Today we're going to work on SaturnCI, which is my CI platform that I've been working on. Haven't worked on it in a while, but let me share my screen and I'll pick back up where I left off. Okay, so I'm in a habit of leaving myself some kind of loose end whenever I end, so that when I pick it back up, I can see where I left off. And by the way, when did I most recently work on this? March 17th, and it's now April 7th, so it's been a while. Okay, so I left this note in my Docker Compose file. How do I get Docker to cache somewhere remotely instead of on the local machine? So, Shalini, have you seen Saturn CI at all by chance?
Yeah. In my current company, we do use GitLab CI/CD.
Okay.
So we have .gitlab.ci dot something YML, I guess. Yeah,
Okay.
GitLab-ci.yml.
Okay. But would you happen to have seen my CI product that I'm working on?
No, no, not yet. I think I missed few of your
Okay.
videos.
Okay. Yeah, I just asked because if you haven't seen it yet, then I should probably explain it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it does the same thing as like GitLab CI. I've never seen that, but I assume it's quite similar. Or Circle CI or GitHub Actions. It's
Mm-hmm.
only meant to work with Rails, and so far it hardly does anything. Um, Currently, here's the issue currently. I've been working on this for a while. Um, you can see that these builds take like 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, 4 minutes. So on the order of like 4 or 5 minutes. But then if we look at the actual jobs, um, this test run, it's split into two parallel test runs. Um, this test run took about 20 seconds. This other test run took about 13 seconds. So the longest one took 20 seconds, yet the whole thing took 5 minutes. So that's quite a bit of overhead. Seems
Mm-hmm.
excessive. Seems like seems like we should at least be able to get it down to like 2 minutes or something like that, or hopefully like 1 minute. Ideally, it would just take 20 seconds, but there's going to be some overhead. So um to make this not take as long, I'm wanting to do some caching. I added this kind of like events report thing here so we can see which things take up how much time. And we can see that the most time consuming things are this one. Okay, so this is seconds. It's 130 seconds between the image build start and the image build finish. So the image build takes 130 seconds, 2 minutes and 10 seconds. And then there's this, what I call the pre-script. It runs like Rails DB create, Rails DB schema load, that kind of stuff. That takes almost a minute. So that's a pretty time consuming one too. And getting the job machine ready takes some time also, but the biggest offender here is this image build. So I'm trying to cache the image build so we can get rid of that. And obviously, if we subtract like 2 minutes from this 5 minutes, then that's pretty good. That gets us down to 3 minutes. But the question is, how do we cache the build? Whoops. So here's my Docker Compose file.
Mm-hmm.
Shalini, how familiar are you with Docker and Docker Compose and all that?
Not that much.
Okay.
I'm learning, but not that much.
Okay. What's your understanding of like what Docker is and what it's for?
Yeah, I do what Docker is. Like, we use Kubernetes in here. So I do know what Docker is. It's for image, like if we are developing something and deploying something, it should be on the same image itself. So to make sure it's on same image, we use Docker files which create images.
Yeah, so people often talk about like Dockerizing an app. It's like, all right, our app is Dockerized or whatever. And I'd heard that a whole bunch of times. And honestly, it kind of misled me because later I realized that it doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, to talk about an app being Dockerized. It's more like an environment gets Dockerized.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two use cases for Docker, as far as I understand. You can Dockerize a development environment, or you can Dockerize a production environment. So you mentioning Kubernetes, I'm guessing that means that where you work, they have the production environment Dockerized. And the benefit of that is that you don't have to manually install a bunch of dependencies. I'll speak about the development environment first. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like this app, for example, let's see, is it this Docker file that I want to look at? Yeah, it is. Okay. So in this app, I have a couple dependencies. I have Postgres and Redis. Um, and in the undocker way, I would have to like clone this repo, and then I would have to install Postgres if I didn't already, and I would have to install Redis if I didn't already. And this is
Mm-hmm.
a pretty new app, and actually I'm not even using Redis yet. I might never. Um, but this is a pretty small app with very few dependencies. Most production apps that have been around for 5 or 10 years or whatever, they're gonna have a lot more dependencies. Um, Shalini, I'm sure you've gone through the experience when you've started a job where you need to set up your development environment, and maybe it's kind of a pain in the ass and can take a while. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you remember like how long it has taken you sometimes to get set up with a new dev environment?
So when I started learning Ruby, it used to take a lot of time, but now as I have like 6 years of experience, it is quite faster now. But yeah, when I started working on Ruby and developing Ruby apps, it was taking me more than 6 hours, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, and I actually gave a Docker workshop at RailsConf a couple years ago, and I asked the audience like how many people have set up a development environment and it took more than 2 hours. And there was maybe like
Mm-hmm.
100 people in the room, and everybody's hand went up. And then I asked like more than 4 hours, and there was still a lot of hands up. More than a day, and there were still not as many, but maybe like I don't know, half or a quarter or something like that. And I just kept going up and up, and it was like I got to like 3 days, a week, whatever, and people's hands were still up. And I'm like, okay, just tell me, how long did it take? And somebody was like, it took so long to get the dev environment set up that we just gave up. And so this is like a big problem. And so I really am a big fan of Docker for this reason, because it takes that thing which might take 4 hours or a whole day or even a week, and it makes it take like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's the development environment application of Docker. And then for production environment, it's like similar but not quite the same, because with a local environment, you're running certain dependencies locally, like a database, for example, or to be more precise, a database management system, database service. But in production, you're usually not having your database service running on the same machine as your application. You have an application server, and then you have a separate database service that's running somewhere completely different, and it's configured, it's set up a different way, blah, blah, blah. And so your production environment has different needs from your development environment. So I think usually people will have like one Docker file for local development and another Docker file for the production environment. Okay, so those are like the normal use cases for Docker. I'm using Docker in yet a different way. Um, so this Docker file we're looking at right now is for my local development environment. I do have another Docker file for my production environment, but then also I have this other Docker Compose file for this CI test environment. So the way that I'm able to run tests from anybody's project is that, how am I going to run tests from any customer's project? Like, I would have to like set up, I'd have to replicate their like development environment on my servers in order to run their tests. And that's not realistic. If there's like a whole bunch of dependencies that can take hours or days to set up, that's not realistic. And so what I'm doing is, in theory, because I don't have any customers yet, um, in theory, each of my customers would set up a Docker file that can run their app, as well as a Docker Compose file, which specifies their dependencies. And I guess I should pause here. Um, Shalini, do you understand the difference between Docker and Docker Compose, or rather the place of Docker Compose in the whole picture?
No, can you explain it?
Yeah, so a Docker file is a configuration for one single service. In this case, it's the configuration for my application. Like, whoops. For my application, I have to, among other things, I have to do a bundle install to install the gem dependencies, have to install yarn and run yarn, and then ultimately start a Rails server. So those things are specific to my application because it happens to be a Rails application. I've done it before where I have a Python application, and so my Docker file has different stuff. It's Python related stuff. It's like the recipe for how to get this Python application going. So the Docker file is for one custom service. The Docker Compose file, and actually let me show you that other Docker Compose file we were just looking at. So the Docker Compose file lists kind of your entire constellation of services that your development environment needs. And so that could include your custom app. It may or may not, but it could include it. And quite often it'll include these kind of what you might call off-the-shelf services like Postgres and Redis. And there's a command you can run, Docker Compose up, which will look at your Docker Compose file and it'll say, okay, I see these services here, Postgres and Redis. Let me go and download the images for these services. And then not only will it download and install these services, it will start running the services. And so I guess the way I'd summarize it is like a Docker file is for a single service, single application, and then the Docker Compose file lists multiple services and their configurations and helps you run all those services so that you can work on your application locally. I'll pause there because I don't know if I explained that very well.
No, 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 it makes sense.
Okay. 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 So here's my Docker Compose file for running on CI. So a second ago, we were looking at that Docker Compose file, which had Postgres and Redis. Again, that's
Mm-hmm.
for my local development. This is a different Docker Compose file for running the tests on the CI platform. This also happens to include Postgres and Redis, but it also includes Chrome because in order to run the tests in this environment, we need a browser to run the tests on. And the machines I run these on, they're just blank. They don't know I want Chrome. So I specify Chrome as a service in my Docker Compose file. And then the other additional thing is I have this Saturn test app service. So unlike PostgreSQL or Redis or Chrome, this is not an off-the-shelf service. This is a custom service that I've, again, defined with my Docker file. And I'm saying, hey, take this custom service. It's specified in this Docker file here, and you can build that and run it along with these other services, Postgres, Redis, and Chrome. So taking this Docker Compose file and downloading and installing all these services, that's the thing that takes 130 seconds. And that's the thing that I'm wanting to cache.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm. But there's a difficulty. Normally, Docker Compose just handles caching for you. But normally you're working on your local machine. So you run Docker Compose once, caches it, you run it again, and it just reads from the cache and it's much faster. But each time I do a separate test run, it's a fresh virtual machine. And so I can't just cache it on the virtual machine because then for the next test run, it's a new fresh virtual machine. So it wouldn't have any of those cache files. So I have to cache it somewhere else. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT how I can accomplish this. When I run Docker Compose build, how can I get it to cache the files not on my local machine, but somewhere remotely? I'm using DigitalOcean if it makes a difference. Just curious, Shalina, how long have you been programming?
It's programming maybe more than 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And working as a Rails developer, you can say 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you start with?
I started with what was that? Rails documentation.
Oh, okay.
I yeah.
I mean, like before, you said you've been doing Rails for 6 years. You've been programming for 8 years, so you must have done something else for those first 2 years.
Yeah, so I was doing Java, like I was working on Oracle ADF, like Application Development Framework. So there was a drag and drop for the front end, and for the back end, you have to write Java.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Let's see if we can understand what we have here. So let's just start from the top, I guess. To cache Docker build files remotely when using DigitalOcean, you can leverage DigitalOcean's container registry. This registry can store your Docker images and act as a cache, making your build process more efficient by reusing layers that haven't changed. Here's a concise guide on how to achieve this. Set up DigitalOcean container registry. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I already have a container registry. And with Docker, there's just so much to learn. Are you familiar by chance, Shalini, with the concept of a container registry?
Not really.
It's basically just a place, it's a remote location where you can store your containers. So like we looked at our Docker Compose configuration.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we might use that sorry, not even the Docker Compose configuration, but just that Docker file that defines our custom service. We might use that Docker file to create a build, but our code changes over time. So we might do that build a whole bunch. Like every day we might do multiple builds. And so we'll make a build and then we'll push it out to our container repository.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And like I imagine for your Kubernetes deployments that you do at work, um, they probably have a container registry somewhere and they'll like push up a build to the registry. And then when they want to do a new deployment, they push up that build and then replace the older container with the newer container from the container registry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it's saying we can use our container registry for caching purposes. And so it says first we want to authenticate. All right. I'm not looking for like the really low level nuts and bolts right now. I'm more looking for the high level, how do I accomplish this?
Mm-hmm.
Tag your Docker image. Okay. So we see here the Docker build command, and we're giving it a tag called latest apparently. Build and push the image. Okay. Okay. I need to pause for a second because what is it that we're caching? Um, things change from build to build, so we can't cache everything. We're gonna have to know how to bust the cache when things change. Um, all right, but anyway, use the image in your Docker Compose file. Okay. Okay. So there's a bunch of unknowns here. I don't know what I'm doing. This is experimental. So I'm not going to worry
Mm-hmm.
about like being efficient and like getting each step right. I'm going to do some experimentation. So let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can at least start keeping our builds in this remote location instead of on my local machine. So what might that look like? We have this Docker Compose file, Saturn test app. Okay, image. Okay, so we might do something like this. And of course, it's not my registry.digitalocean.com. I'm going to have to copy my actual registry URL, which actually I think I have somewhere else. Yeah, I have this deploy script. Okay. Okay. So here's my current registry URL. Let me think. Yeah, let's try that. And then I guess I just do a Docker Compose build. I'm not sure. Okay, let's see. Here's my Docker Compose file now. How can I test it to see if it works? Okay, yeah, Docker Compose build. Let's just see if that works. That's surprising. Nothing happened at all.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to specify the Docker file. Docker compose build. Yeah. So it was expecting a file in the default location, but my file's not located in the default location, so I had to specify it.
Okay.
Okay. So nothing is obviously going wrong yet. Seems to be building the image. So this thing here says 2 months ago, and it says 6 images. So maybe if this succeeds, we can expect this to say 7 images,
7.
and
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know, 1 minute ago or whatever it might say. And this will take, of course, about 130 seconds. So we'll wait for this. Um, oh, okay. We're getting
Error.
some error here. Okay. Well, I'll handle this the way I handle most such errors, which is to not even try to think about it. I'll just paste it directly into ChatGPT. And Shalini, what took you to the UK? Did you move there for a job or for some other reason?
For the personal reason.
For personal reasons, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, and did you have a job lined up before you went there, or did you move there and then you had to find a job?
No, so basically I quit my job and I will say I got married and then
Okay.
COVID happened.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I did freelancing in the meantime until my visa came. So when my visa came and I moved here, I don't have any job, but I think it took me I think 15 to 20 days uh, because I already had 2 years of company experience and then doing freelancing for around 6 to 8 months. So I had like around 3 years of experience. So it was quite
Okay.
easy for me to find a real job, I guess.
Yeah, back then, even now, it's hard for people with like 20 years of experience to find a job.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty brutal.
I got
Um,
lucky, I guess.
yeah. So how long have you been working at the place you work now?
In here, it's been more than 1.5 year now.
Okay. Okay. So it says the error, blah blah blah. Oh, interesting. This yarn command apparently failed. I'm a little skeptical. Okay, so okay, so here's my question that I'm thinking. Like, is this happening because of the change I just made, or would it have happened anyway?
I
Because
think.
if it would have happened anyway, then that's a different story than if it was a result of my change. So let's do an experiment and comment this line out and see if we're able to do a Docker Compose build successfully or if it fails. And remind me, are you in London or somewhere else?
No, I am in Swindon. It's like 1 hour train journey from London.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not that far.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been to England. I have no idea the geography.
Okay.
Okay, so far so good with this build, but the other one went seemingly well for a while too.
Yeah.
How big is the team that you work on currently?
It's not that big to be honest.
Mhm.
Before before 6 months, it was a pretty big team, like me, one more developer, and then one of the tech lead, one QA,
Hmm.
one PM. But right now it's just me, my tech lead, and one QA, one PM. So it's just four of us.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if you caught that, Shalini, but that last build worked. So it
Yeah.
seems like it must have been that image change.
Image issue.
Oh, look. Okay. That succeeded. So I went and I uncommented this, and then I attempted to build again, and it
It
seemed
worked.
to succeed. But maybe
Can
that's
you
just because it
check?
was cached. I don't know. Let's take a look up here and see, if our prediction comes true, these values will change. Okay, so it
Yeah.
still says six images and 2 months ago. So it seems like maybe it did not work. Okay, but it does say this. Okay, so I'm going to ask ChatGPT what happened. What just happened? Did it work? If so, how can I verify for certain that it worked? I'm skeptical. I'm not sure that I believe that it actually worked. Oh, it says push the image to the registry. So that makes sense. It's not going to push the image to the registry automatically. It's going to need me to do that. Okay, so let me look at my images. Excuse me. Um, okay, and I'm going to do Docker image ls grep Saturn. Okay, so I see this one here. So I guess I need to push it. Authentication required. Okay. Um, let me do that. Registry login. Okay. Unable to authenticate me. Well, why?
Do they have some kind of authentication which you are missing?
Apparently. Oh, I'm going to open up this file again. Let's see. Oh, if there's anything I'm missing, I don't know what it is. Oh, actually, let me try this. I'm going to go cd ops and try to log in while I'm in this folder. No, it didn't work. Okay. Okay. And that failed. So let's regenerate that. Generate. Okay. Docstl auth init. Let's try that. I'm going to clear my screen. Okay. Unable to use the supplied token. Okay. Well, I guess it did say, what did it say? Generate a personal access token. Okay, go to your control panel, navigate to API. Okay. Maybe my token or whatever just expired.
possible.
Okay.
Generate new one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Um, oh, expires never. Hmm. Well, I'll generate a new one anyway. Um, I'll call it April 2024. Okay. Okay, and then what do I do with it?
How to use that token.
Yeah. I generated a token. How do I use it? Hmm. But I did author it, and it
Maybe in that file, is this possible?
in which file? This file?
I think so, yeah.
I don't think there's any token here. Okay. I'm gonna say it doesn't ask me for a token. It just gives me the same error. Oh, okay. We can pass it an access token flag. Can I just leave it blank? No. Okay. All right. I'll have to rotate my tokens after this.
Now try
Um,
again.
okay. Okay, I still need to authenticate. Oh, there we go. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it looks like this will take a minute. Shalini, is this the first Code with Jason meetup that you've joined, or have you joined before?
Yes, no, it's the first one.
First one?
I follow you on YouTube. I think I saw a couple of videos,
Okay.
but I haven't joined before. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to any Ruby conferences this year?
No. Last month, I organized a Ruby meetup in my company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quite nice.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going on holiday on the next meetup, so I won't able to join next one. But
Okay.
yeah, I started joining meetup recently.
Okay. So was it like an open meetup for whoever wants to come? It was just hosted at your company's office?
No, no, no. It was open meetup. Whoever wants to come, they can come.
But was it hosted at your company's office?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It was
Okay.
hosted in my company. Like, we were the organizer.
Yeah, okay. Okay, nice. How many people showed up?
Around 40.
40. Wow, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
yeah. It was nice. It was packed.
How big is Swindon? Like how many people?
Swindon is really small. Like,
Mm.
my company is based in London, so I do go to London a lot.
Okay, so the meetup happened in London?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I see, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say like 40 people in Swindon if it's small. Like, how did that happen? But it was in London.
No, it's a red town. It's just a small town, basically. But I think there are few companies, but yeah, my company is based in London.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I went to one in Chicago. Um,
Mm-hmm.
well, actually, I went to it twice. The first time it was actually really small. There was maybe like, I don't know, 8 or 10 people there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I went again. That was back in November of 2023, and then in February of this year, I went and actually spoke. And at that one, that was held at the office of this company called Eighth Light, and there was I think about 35 people there.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, but I think the Ruby meetups are a lot smaller than they used to be. I remember, I think, like if I'm not mistaken, there was like pre-pandemic, like I went to one in Chicago and it was like over 100 people.
Mm-hmm. I
But
think, yeah, I heard like I was not pre-pandemic. I was not in UK pre-pandemic, but
mhm,
I had a chat with someone. He was mentioning like before pandemic there was so many meetups going on, and a bunch of people shows up. But now I think it's getting again started. Like there was a halt between for 2 3 years where there was no meetup at all, and now like I think two Ruby meetup happened in London itself.
mhm,
So it's again getting that started with zero, I guess. So on the first
yeah.
meetup, I think there was around 20 25 people. I went to there as well. But in the meetup which we organized at Builder AI, it was around 35 to 40. So it was a good show up. So maybe next one there will be more people. We are hoping.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
bet if the meetup continues to happen consistently each month, it'll continue to grow.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, there's for a long time, there's been no reason why meetups can't happen,
yeah.
but they're like not really coming back. They're only coming back a little bit. And I've noticed that the ones that are coming back, at least the Ruby meetups, they don't even happen every month. They just happen kind of sporadically.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a little bit it's a little bit frustrating to see. I would maybe start a meetup in my own town, but I think it's too small. There's hardly any Ruby developers here.
Yeah,
If I were to start a Ruby meetup here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, it'd probably be like me and one other guy.
yeah. I think it will be same for me in Swindon as well. It's again a small town. I'm not sure I know anyone with Reels, as a Reels
Okay.
developer here. But London is quite big.
Yeah. Does your husband do programming too, or does he do some other kind of work?
No, he is a technical product manager.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, this push is taking quite a while.
yeah,
This happens sometimes. I'm remembering now. Sometimes these pushes just take forever. I'm gonna check on the repository in DigitalOcean and see if we see any changes here.
and it changes. Yeah,
Yeah. Nope,
no, not
not
yet.
surprising. Okay, well, I think once this finishes, presuming it is ever going to, let's think about what we want to do next. So we added this line here. Um, Let me think. I have to refresh my memory because it's been so long since I've done so much of this stuff. Okay, so this is the script that runs when we do a build. Sorry, and by build I don't mean Docker compose build. I mean a build. as in like a test run.
Okay.
Um, so we run Docker Compose build during the test run. So when we do that, it should grab from the cache. And so if we do this and it's successful, okay, so like here's how we can know if what we just did was successful. We can kick off another test run, and this, since it's using the new Docker Compose file, should grab from the container registry instead of
Mm-hmm.
looking
The
locally and
local
not
machine.
finding anything. And then instead of taking 130 seconds, it should take, very little time instead. And so instead of seeing it take like 4 or 5 minutes, it should take like 2 or 3 minutes. So that's how we'll know. We just apparently have to wait a bazillion years for this to finish. I'm going to kill this and start over again and see if we have better luck on a second try. And
Is
sometimes
this
this
still
happens. What's that?
is this still pushing the one who was waiting?
No, I killed that and started a new one. But this one's not going great either. I
Yeah,
have a hunch, because this has happened before on these calls. I have a hunch that maybe the bandwidth used by Zoom is interfering with this and it can't do both things at once.
possible.
So I'm not even going to try, and it's close to the end of the hour anyway. So I think I'm going to save that part for next time. But you don't know Shalini because you haven't seen the previous videos, but I've spent like 4 or 5 sessions trying to figure out this caching stuff. I've tried like
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 different ideas, and none of them turned out to be viable. But this one, out of everything I've tried so far, this is the one that I'm like most happy with and seems the most promising. So if this works, that'll be great.
Amazing.
Um, we do have a couple minutes left, so like any questions about Docker or anything at all before we hop off?
Yeah, so I am like learning more about the pipeline stuff and Kubernetes itself as well, like how things work. And do you have any tip? How can I learn so quickly, I guess?
Yeah. Well, one suggestion I have is if you search for like let's see, Jason Sweat Docker Ruby Conf. Yeah. So there's this workshop I gave in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a gentle introduction to Docker for Rubyists. So I think that's a pretty good introduction. And honestly, I made this because I didn't find anything out there that I thought was any good, honestly. Um, and so this is really what I think is the best resource for getting started because I start from the very beginning and I do something very, very simple. Whereas a lot of the Docker tutorials and the official documentation, it just like jumps straight in and it's like, whoa, like what are any of these things? It's just so confusing. So I
Mm-hmm.
would recommend this. And again, if you search Jason Sweat Docker RubyConf, it comes up.
Yeah, sure. I opened this. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah. I want to mention a couple other things. Um, I don't know if you know about this, Shalini, but I have this mentorship program. Have you seen this?
Oh yeah, yeah, I saw that. I
Mm-hmm.
think you posted something, someone else's video as well in the mentorship, I guess.
Yeah. So, dear viewer, if you're interested in spending some time in these sessions and working on your projects, we worked on my project today, but sometimes I work on mentees' projects, or we just talk
Mm-hmm.
and ask questions and stuff like that. I guess kind of kind of like what you and I were doing earlier, Shalini, with the Docker and Docker Compose stuff and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's an application form where you can apply to be a mentee.
Okay, sure.
So that's one thing I wanted to mention. And the other thing I want to mention, dear viewer, is that I do consulting. Um, and I don't necessarily mean just writing code. I mean also stuff like this. Like I work with developers to help them do professional development. I also work with CTOs and VPs of engineering and people like that to help them improve their leadership skills and technical skills and stuff like that. You can find this stuff at codewithjason.com. You can go to this consulting link, and there's an application here where you can get in touch with me. That's that. And Shalini, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All
Have
right,
a
see you
great day,
later.
guys. Bye.